An emperor looks at the sky on the eve of battle, and within a generation, an entire empire begins to change its religious direction. Tonight, we are going to examine the rise of Constantine and how Christianity moved from a persecuted minority to an imperially protected and eventually favored religion within the Roman Empire. This will be a chronological, fact-based narrative. We will begin with the crisis of the 3rd century, examine the Tetrarchic reforms of follow Constantine's early career inside imperial politics, analyze the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, study the Edict of Milan, trace the consolidation of power, and examine the Council of Nicaea and its long-term consequences. We will separate documented events from later legend and track what can be historically verified. At the beginning of the 4th century, Christianity was not the dominant force in the empire. It was one religion among many, sometimes tolerated, sometimes persecuted. In AD 303, imperial edicts ordered churches destroyed and Christian texts burned. Within 25 years, bishops were advising the emperor. Churches were being built with imperial funding, and Christianity was granted legal protection. That transformation did not happen slowly over centuries. It happened within Constantine's lifetime. The key question is not simply whether Constantine converted to Christianity, but how his political decisions reshaped the institutional structure of the church and the empire itself. Few figures in history sit at the intersection of faith and power as directly as Constantine. Before him, Christianity had no emperor as patron. After him, Christianity would never again exist entirely outside imperial influence. Did Constantine adopt Christianity out of personal conviction, political strategy, or a mixture of both? How did civil war create the conditions for religious change? And once Christianity gained imperial favor, how did that alter its internal debates, leadership structures, and relationship to state authority? These are not abstract theological questions. They are historical developments tied to specific events and policies. This episode will follow the sequence step by step. We will examine the instability of the Roman Empire in the late 3rd century, the administrative reforms designed to prevent collapse, Constantine's contested claim to power, the military campaigns that secured his position, the legal changes he enacted, and the councils he convened. We will also address what did not change immediately. Paganism did not disappear overnight. Religious pluralism continued. Imperial policy evolved gradually. Understanding that nuance matters, because oversimplification distorts the scale and complexity of the shift. If you appreciate long-form structured historical storytelling grounded in primary sources and mainstream scholarship, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It allows deeper, research-driven episodes like this to continue. And before we move forward, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And what time is it there right now? And here's a question to consider as we begin. You think Constantine changed Christianity more? Or did Christianity change the Roman Empire more profoundly? We begin in a world on the edge of collapse. When Constantine was born around AD 272 in the city of Nicaea, the Roman Empire was still recovering from nearly 5 decades of instability that had pushed it to the brink of fragmentation. Historians refer to this period, roughly AD 235 to 284, as the crisis of the 3rd century. During these years, emperors were proclaimed and assassinated with alarming frequency. Military commanders elevated by their troops often lasted only months before being overthrown. External pressures intensified along the Rhine and Danube frontiers, while eastern territories faced threats from the Sassanid Persian Empire. Internal rebellions and breakaway regimes briefly divided the empire into competing regions. This mattered because Constantine's political environment was not a stable imperial system, but one shaped by survival, rapid turnover, and militarized leadership. Economic conditions compounded the instability. Currency debasement led to inflation, undermining trust in the imperial monetary system. Trade networks were disrupted by insecurity along roads and borders. Plague outbreaks reduced population and strained agricultural production. The empire had grown vast, stretching from Britain to Syria, but administrative mechanisms had not adapted efficiently to govern such territory under continuous threat. Emperors increasingly relied on the army not only for defense, but also for legitimacy. Military loyalty became the decisive factor in succession. In this context, governance and warfare became inseparable. In AD 284, Diocletian seized power and initiated sweeping reforms aimed at stabilizing the empire. Recognizing that a single ruler could not effectively manage its size and complexity, he created the Tetrarchy, a system dividing authority between two senior emperors, called Augusti, and two junior emperors, called Caesars. Each ruler governed a specific region while maintaining theoretical unity. The structure was designed to ensure orderly succession and rapid military response. It was not democracy, it was strategic decentralization. This reform temporarily restored stability, reduced internal fragmentation, and strengthened frontier defense. Constantine's father, Constantius Chlorus, rose within this new system. In AD 293, he was appointed Caesar under Maximian, one of the Augusti. As part of political realignment, Constantius separated from Helena, Constantine's mother, and married Maximian's stepdaughter to solidify alliances. Constantine himself was sent east to serve in the court of Diocletian, and later Some historians interpret this move as both education and political insurance. Having the son of a powerful Caesar present at court ensured loyalty and minimized rebellion risk. Constantine was exposed early to imperial administration, military campaigns, and the mechanics of centralized authority. During this same period, Diocletian initiated the Great Persecution of Christians in AD 303. Edicts ordered churches demolished, Christian scriptures surrendered and burned, and clergy imprisoned. Later, edicts required public sacrifice to Roman gods. The rationale was not primarily theological but political. Roman religion was deeply intertwined with state identity. Unity of worship was believed to support unity of empire. Christians who refused sacrifice to traditional gods and the emperor's genius were perceived as destabilizing elements. This context matters because Constantine matured within an administration that officially targeted Christianity as a threat to order. When Diocletian abdicated voluntarily in AD 305, an unprecedented act for a Roman emperor, the carefully structured Tetrarchic system began to strain. Succession did not proceed as smoothly as planned. Constantius became Augustus in the west, but he died in 306 while campaigning in Britain. His troops immediately proclaimed Constantine as Augustus. This action bypassed the official succession design and triggered renewed competition among multiple claimants. The empire once again entered a phase of civil conflict. At these days, Constantine was not yet a Christian emperor. He was a military leader backed by loyal troops, navigating a fractured political system. His immediate objective was survival and consolidation of authority. The religious transformation that would later define his legacy had not yet publicly occurred. But the instability of the empire created conditions in which decisive victories could rapidly alter political and religious landscapes. In the next part, we will examine Constantine's early consolidation of power in the West and the rising confrontation with which would culminate in a battle outside Rome that reshaped imperial history. After being proclaimed emperor by his father's troops in AD 306, Constantine entered a political landscape that was already fragmented. The Tetrarchic system had been designed to prevent exactly this kind of military acclamation. Officially, succession required recognition by the senior Augusti. In practice, armies still determined power. Calerius, the Eastern Augustus, reluctantly acknowledged Constantine but only as Caesar, not Augustus. This distinction mattered because it signaled limited legitimacy. Constantine accepted the title publicly, while consolidating support privately. Meanwhile, in Rome, another claimant emerged. Maxentius, the son of former Emperor Maximian, was declared emperor by the Praetorian Guard in AD 306. Unlike Constantine, Maxentius controlled the city of Rome itself, along with Italy and parts of North Africa. His position was rooted in traditional Roman authority structures, especially the Praetorian Guard, which historically influenced imperial succession. The empire now had multiple rulers with overlapping claims. Alliances shifted rapidly. Maximian briefly returned to power, then turned against Constantine, and later died under contested circumstances. The political order was no longer functioning as Diocletian intended. Between AD 306 and 312, Constantine focused on securing Gaul and the Rhine frontier. He led campaigns against Germanic tribes and stabilized western provinces under his control. These victories mattered because military credibility was essential. Without battlefield success, imperial claims dissolved quickly. Constantine cultivated loyalty among his troops and reinforced administrative order in his territories. At the same time, tension with Maxentus escalated. Propaganda from both sides portrayed the other as illegitimate. Maxentus emphasized his connection to Rome and traditional religious practice. Constantine framed himself as a restorer of stability. By AD 312, confrontation became unavoidable. Constantine marched south toward Italy with an army estimated at around 40,000 men, significantly smaller than Maxentus' forces. As he advanced, he secured victories in northern Italy, including at Turin and Verona. Each victory weakened Maxentus' defensive position and demonstrated Constantine's tactical competence. This progression matters because Constantine did not march directly to Rome without preparation. He dismantled opposition step by step. As Constantine approached Rome, Maxentus chose to leave the safety of the city's defensive walls and confront him near the Milvian Bridge, north of the city, on October 28th. Ad 312. The reasons for this decision remain debated. Some suggest that omens or internal political pressure influenced him. What is clear is that the battle would determine control of the Western Empire. It is at this stage that accounts of Constantine's religious experience appear. Later Christian sources, particularly Eusebius and Lactantius, report that Constantine experienced a vision before the battle. One version describes a sign of the cross in the sky with the words often translated as, "In this sign, conquer." Another version mentions a dream instructing him to mark his soldiers' shields with a Christian symbol known as the Chiro. Historians debate the precise details and timing of this experience, but the tradition consistently associates the battle with the decisive shift in Constantine's religious orientation. What matters historically is not the exact visual phenomenon, which cannot be independently verified, but the fact that Constantine publicly connected his victory to the Christian god afterward. The Battle of the Milvian Bridge ended with Maxentus' defeat and death. As his forces retreated across the Tiber River, the temporary bridge collapsed, and Maxentus drowned. Constantine entered Rome as victor. This victory eliminated his primary rival in the west and positioned him as dominant emperor over that region. Politically, it consolidated power. Religiously, it marked the first time a Roman emperor attributed military success to the Christian god. From this point forward, Constantine's policies toward Christianity would diverge sharply from those of the Great Persecution less than a decade earlier. The shift was not merely personal belief. It would soon become legal reform. In the next act, we will examine the aftermath of the Milvian Bridge, the alliance with Licinius, and the Edict of Milan, which granted legal toleration to Christianity across the empire. By the time Constantine advanced toward Rome in AD, the confrontation with Maxentus was not merely political, it was existential. Control of the Western Empire would belong to one man. Constantine's army, though experienced and disciplined, was numerically inferior to Maxentus' forces stationed near Rome. Maxentus had the advantage of defensive positioning and familiarity with the terrain, yet he chose to meet Constantine outside the city rather than force a prolonged siege. That decision shaped the outcome of the campaign. In the days leading up to the battle, accounts later written by Lactantius and Eusebius described Constantine experiencing a sign connected to the Christian god. Lactantius, writing closer to the event, reports that Constantine was instructed in a dream to mark his soldiers' shields with a heavenly sign. Eusebius, writing later and claiming to have heard the story from Constantine himself, describes a cross of light appearing in the sky above the sun, accompanied by a message promising victory through that sign. Historians debate the precise form of this experience, but both sources agree on two critical elements. Constantine associated his victory with a divine sign, and he adopted a Christian symbol Achiro, representing the first letters of Christ in Greek into his military imagery. What matters historically is not the exact visual phenomenon, but Constantine's interpretation of events. He believed, or at least publicly declared, that divine assistance played a role in his success. This interpretation influenced subsequent policy decisions. The battle itself unfolded near the Milvian Bridge across the Tiber River. Maxentius' forces initially held defensive ground, but Constantine's cavalry successfully broke through enemy lines. As Maxentius' army retreated toward Rome, congestion on the temporary bridge caused collapse. Maxentius drowned in the river. His body was later recovered and displayed publicly. Constantine entered Rome as undisputed ruler of the Western Empire. The immediate political effect was consolidation of authority over Italy and surrounding territories. The symbolic effect was even more significant. The Arch of Constantine, later erected in Rome to commemorate the victory, does not explicitly reference Christian imagery in surviving inscriptions, but Constantine's private and increasingly public association with Christianity became more visible over time. Coins minted in the early years after the battle still displayed solar imagery associated with Solinvit, the unconquered sun. This suggests that Constantine's religious shift was gradual rather than instantaneous. Following the victory, Constantine did not immediately outlaw pagan practices. Instead, he began to favor Christians through legal protection and patronage. He ordered the return of confiscated church property taken during the Great Persecution. He granted privileges to Christian clergy, including exemption from certain civic obligations. These measures represented the first systematic imperial support for Christianity. The transformation was not yet exclusive endorsement, but it marked a clear departure from previous policy. In early AD 313, Constantine met with Lactantius, the Eastern Emperor, in Milan. Their meeting formalized political alliance through marriage and resulted in what is commonly known as the Edict of Milan, though technically a letter rather than a formal edict. The agreement proclaimed religious toleration across the empire and specifically granted Christians freedom to practice their faith openly. Confiscated property was to be restored without compensation. This decision reversed the legal framework of persecution established only a decade earlier. The Battle of the Milvian Bridge, therefore, functioned as both military victory and ideological turning point. Constantine's consolidation of power allowed him to reshape religious policy in the West. This alliance with Lactantius extended toleration eastward. For the first time, Christianity was not merely tolerated quietly. It was legally protected by imperial authority. In the next part, we will examine how this new legal status altered the church's internal dynamics and how Constantine's relationship with Christianity deepened beyond mere toleration. The meeting between Constantine and Lactantius in Milan in early AD 313 marked a decisive administrative shift. While the so-called Edict of Milan was not a single formal decree carved in stone, it represented a joint agreement communicated through official letters. The policy granted full religious toleration throughout the empire. Crucially, it required that property confiscated from Christians during the Great Persecution be restored without financial compensation to those who had seized it. This provision was not symbolic. It had measurable economic implications. Church buildings, meeting spaces, and assets returned to Christian communities strengthened their institutional stability. The language of the agreement emphasized freedom of worship for all religions, not exclusively Christianity. This matters because Constantine did not immediately impose Christianity as the empire's sole faith. Pagan practices remained legal. Temples were not systematically closed. However, The restoration of property and removal of penalties elevated Christianity from suspect minority to legally recognized body. That legal recognition altered its public visibility. Bishops could operate openly. Christian gatherings were no longer clandestine. Texts could be copied and distributed without fear of confiscation. Constantine went beyond passive toleration. He began actively supporting Christian leadership. Imperial funds were used to construct significant church buildings, including the Lateran Basilica in Rome and churches in the Holy Land. These construction projects symbolized permanence. Christianity was no longer confined to private homes or modest assembly halls. Architecture conveyed legitimacy. The emperor's patronage also strengthened the position of bishops, who now interacted directly with imperial authority. At the same time, Constantine retained elements of traditional Roman religious symbolism. Early coinage continued to depict Solon. He held the title Pontifex Maximus, chief priest of Roman religion, a role traditionally associated with pagan rites. This dual symbolism suggests a gradual transition rather than immediate rupture. Constantine did not dismantle the old religious framework overnight. Instead, he led Christian affiliation onto existing imperial structures. The alliance between Constantine and Licinius, however, did not remain stable. Tensions emerged within a decade. Licinius, who initially agreed to toleration, later adopted policies less favorable to Christians in the East. Political rivalry between AD 316 and 324. A series of conflicts erupted between the two emperors. These wars culminated in Constantine's decisive victory at the Battle of Chrysopolis in AD 324. Licinius was defeated and later executed. This outcome mattered because it made Constantine sole ruler of the Roman Empire. For the first time since the Tetrarchic experiment began, authority was centralized under one emperor. With sole control, Constantine no longer needed compromise with a co-emperor who might resist his religious orientation. His policies toward Christianity intensified. Sunday was declared a day of rest for urban populations in AD 321, though agricultural work was exempt. This measure reflected both administrative convenience and Christian influence. Clergy received expanded legal privileges. Episcopal courts were permitted to adjudicate certain disputes, allowing Christians to resolve matters internally rather than through standard Roman courts. These legal accommodations integrated Christian structures into the broader imperial system. However, legal favor introduced new complications. As Christianity gained prominence, internal theological disagreements acquired political weight. Disputes once confined to regional communities now threatened imperial unity. Constantine, concerned with stability, recognized that doctrinal conflict could undermine cohesion. The most significant early controversy emerged in Alexandria, where a presbyter named Arius challenged prevailing understandings of Christ's divinity. The shift from persecution to patronage had unintended consequences. Christianity's rapid institutional expansion exposed underlying theological disagreements that required resolution. Constantine, now sole emperor, would intervene directly in these debates, not as theologian, but as political unifier. In the next part, we will examine the Arian controversy and Constantine's decision to convene the Council of Nicaea in AD, an event that permanently shaped Christian doctrine and imperial involvement in church affairs. By the early 320s, Christianity was no longer an underground movement. It had legal protection, imperial patronage, and increasing public visibility. With growth came intensified theological debate. The most significant controversy of the period began in Alexandria, one of the intellectual centers of the empire. A presbyter named Arius taught that the Son of God was not co-eternal with the Father, but was a created being, exalted yet subordinate. His position can be summarized in the phrase often associated with his followers: there was when he was not. This mattered because it directly challenged emerging formulations about the full divinity of Christ. The dispute was not a minor academic disagreement. Alexandria was influential, and theological divisions quickly spread beyond local boundaries. Bishops across the eastern provinces took sides. Some supported Arius' emphasis on monotheistic clarity and hierarchical order within the Godhead. Others argued that if Christ were not fully divine, then salvation itself was undermined. The conflict threatened to fracture unity at a moment when Constantine valued stability above all else. A divided church within a newly unified empire posed political risk. Initially, Constantine attempted mediation. He sent letters urging reconciliation and describing the dispute as a matter of subtle terminology rather than fundamental division. However, the controversy continued to escalate. Recognizing that regional councils had failed to resolve the matter decisively, Constantine took an unprecedented step. In AD 325, he convened an ecumenical council in the city of Nicaea, in Bithynia, near his imperial residence. Approximately 250 to 300 bishops attended, primarily from the eastern provinces, but with representation from the west. The convening of the Council of Nicaea marked a turning point in the relationship between church and state. For the first time, a Roman emperor called and oversaw a gathering of Christian bishops to settle doctrinal issues. Constantine did not preside as a theological authority, but he facilitated proceedings and sought consensus. His presence underscored that religious unity was now considered integral to imperial cohesion. The central outcome of the council was the formulation of the Nicene Creed. The bishops affirmed that the Son was begotten, not made, of one substance, homoousios, with the Father. The term homoousios, meaning of the same essence, was decisive. It rejected Arius' claim that the Son was a created being. The Creed established a theological boundary that defined orthodoxy in relation to Christ's nature. Arius and a few supporters were exiled. Their writings were ordered burned. This action demonstrates how doctrinal disagreement now carried civil consequences. The council also addressed administrative matters, including the date of Easter and disciplinary standards for clergy. These decisions reflected broader concerns about uniform practice across the empire. Constantine's support ensured implementation. However, unity achieved at Nicaea did not eliminate controversy. Debates over terminology and interpretation persisted for decades. Some bishops who signed the creed later shifted positions under political pressure. The controversy would resurface repeatedly throughout the 4th century. What Nicaea accomplished was not permanent theological peace, but structural precedent. It established the model of imperial involvement in doctrinal resolution. The emperor demonstrated that he could convene, support, and enforce theological decisions. This precedent would shape future councils and deepen the intertwining of church and imperial authority. By the end of the 320s, Constantine had unified the empire militarily and influenced its dominant religious structure. Christianity had moved from persecution to legal toleration, to imperial sponsorship, and now to doctrinal standardization under imperial oversight. In the next spot, we will examine how Constantine reshaped the empire's political geography through the founding of Constantinople and how his later policies further integrated Christianity into imperial identity. By the mid-320s, Constantine had achieved what none of his rivals had managed: sole control of the Roman Empire. With Licinius defeated in AD 3234, the Tetrarchic experiment formally ended. Authority was centralized again under a single ruler. This political consolidation allowed Constantine to implement long-term structural reforms without negotiation with co-emperors. One of his most consequential decisions was not purely religious, but geographic: the founding of a new imperial capital. In AD 330, Constantine formally inaugurated Constantinople on the site of the ancient city of Byzantium, located strategically between Europe and Asia, along major trade routes and near the eastern frontier. The city offered military and economic advantages over Rome. Rome remained symbolically significant, but it was geographically distant from many pressing frontiers. By establishing a new capital in the east, Constantine repositioned the administrative center of gravity of the empire. This mattered because the eastern provinces were wealthier, more urbanized, and increasingly central to imperial politics. Constantinople was designed as a Christian imperial city, while it retained elements of traditional Roman civic structure. Senate House. Public monuments sit, lacked the deep-rooted pagan temple complexes that characterized Rome. Constantine commissioned churches and promoted Christian symbolism within the urban landscape. However, he did not abolish pagan worship outright. Temples were not universally closed. Public pagan practice continued, though imperial favor increasingly tilted toward Christianity. Constantine's later policies continued this pattern of preference without immediate exclusivity. He granted financial support for church construction, returned additional properties, and intervened in episcopal disputes beyond Nicaea. Bishops gained social and political influence as intermediaries between local communities and imperial authority. Clergy received tax exemptions and legal privileges. Sunday legislation, introduced earlier, was reinforced. These measures gradually embedded Christianity within administrative life. At the same time, Constantine maintained political pragmatism. He did not undergo Christian baptism until shortly before his death in AD 337, reportedly baptized by Eusebius of Nicaea. Delayed baptism was not unusual in the 4th century, particularly among elites who believed post-baptismal sin carried heightened spiritual risk. This fact complicates simple narratives of immediate transformation. Constantine's public identification with Christianity preceded formal baptism by decades. His religious commitment appears to have developed over time rather than through a single moment. Constantine's death in AD 337 left the empire to his sons, who continued navigating the intersection of imperial authority and Christian doctrine. The theological disputes that Nicaea sought to settle did not disappear. Arian controversy resurfaced repeatedly, and imperial involvement intensified in subsequent reigns. Yet the structural shift had already occurred. Christianity was no longer marginal. It was institutionally integrated. The founding of Constantinople ensured that the Eastern Empire would carry forward both Roman governance and Christian imperial identity. Over the following centuries, this Eastern Roman Empire, later called the Byzantine Empire, would preserve and expand the model. Constantine established. By the end of his reign, Constantine had altered the trajectory of both empire and church. Military victory opened political opportunity. Legal toleration enabled institutional growth. Doctrinal intervention established precedent. Urban restructuring shifted geographic focus. In the next act, we will examine how Constantine's policies affected pagan traditions, how gradual the transition truly was, and whether the Christianization of the empire was as immediate as later narratives suggest. By the time Constantine founded Constantinople in AD 300, Christianity had achieved legal protection, imperial favor, and doctrinal consolidation at Nicaea. However, it is essential to understand what did not change immediately. The Roman Empire did not suddenly become uniformly Christian. Pagan temples continued operating. Traditional festivals remained embedded in civic calendars. Priests of established cults retained influence in many cities. Constantine's policies favored Christianity, but they did not outlaw competing religious practices across the empire. Coins minted during the early years after the Milvian Bridge still depicted Solenvik, the unconquered sun. This solar imagery had deep roots in imperial symbolism and appealed broadly across religious lines. Constantine's gradual reduction of explicitly pagan iconography took time. The coexistence of Christian patronage and solar symbolism suggests a transitional phase rather than abrupt rupture. This mattered because it demonstrates political caution. Constantine was consolidating authority in a diverse empire. Sudden suppression of long-standing religious traditions could have destabilized fragile unity. In Rome itself, the Senate remained largely composed of pagan aristocrats. Constantine did not purge the Senate or dismantle traditional priesthoods immediately. Instead, he redirected imperial resources toward Christian institutions while allowing traditional structures to persist. This strategy minimized resistance while gradually shifting cultural weight. It also reflects the demographic reality that Christians, though growing in number, were still a minority in many regions during the early 4th century. Legal reform under Constantine also extended beyond religion. He reorganized administrative divisions, strengthened the imperial court, and refined taxation systems. His reforms cannot be reduced to religious motivation alone. They were part of broader statecraft. However, Christian leaders increasingly benefited from imperial access. Bishops gained the right to serve as arbitrators in legal disputes, if both parties consented. This development integrated ecclesiastical authority into civic life. The church's role expanded from purely spiritual leadership to semi-judicial function. The Donatist controversy in North Africa illustrates how imperial involvement complicated internal disputes. Donatists argued that clergy who had surrendered scriptures during persecution were invalid ministers, and that sacraments performed by them were illegitimate. The conflict escalated regionally. Constantine initially attempted mediation, then convened councils, and eventually used state power to enforce decisions against. This episode matters because it reveals an early instance of coercive enforcement of religious uniformity under imperial authority. Constantine's intent was unity, but the use of civil force in religious disputes set precedent. Pagan worship, meanwhile, remained widespread. Constantine restricted certain practices, such as some forms of sacrifice, but did not implement systematic empire-wide bans. Later, emperors would move more aggressively in that direction. During Constantine's reign, the transformation was primarily structural and symbolic. Christianity gained prominence in court and urban architecture. Paganism gradually lost state sponsorship rather than being immediately criminalized. By examining what remained unchanged, we gain clearer perspective. The rise of Christianity under Constantine was a process shaped by administrative preference, architectural visibility, legal privilege, and doctrinal intervention, not immediate eradication of alternative faiths. The empire entered a transitional period in which religious pluralism persisted under increasingly Christian imperial leadership. In the next part, we will examine how Constantine's relationship with bishops evolved, and how imperial patronage reshaped ecclesiastical hierarchy and authority. As Christianity moved from tolerated religion to imperially favored institution, the role of bishops expanded significantly. Before Constantine, bishops functioned primarily as local leaders responsible for teaching, discipline, and charitable organization within their communities. After Constantine, they increasingly interacted with imperial administration. This shift mattered because it altered both the internal structure of the church and its public authority. Constantine treated bishops as legitimate civic figures. He corresponded with them directly, invited them to imperial residencies, and funded travel to councils. By convening the Council of Nicaea, he demonstrated that bishops were now participants in empire-wide deliberation, rather than isolated regional authorities. Their decisions had political implications. In return, bishops gained proximity to power. Access to the emperor elevated their social status and influence within cities. Imperial patronage strengthened certain episcopal sees more than others. Cities such as Rome, Alexandria, Antioch, and later Constantinople gained prominence because of political or historical significance. This hierarchical development was not entirely new, but imperial recognition accelerated it. For example, Constantinople, as the new capital, would eventually claim status second only to Rome in ecclesiastical ranking. Political geography increasingly influenced ecclesiastical hierarchy. Financial support also reshaped church infrastructure. Constantine allocated funds for basilicas in major urban centers and in Jerusalem, where he commissioned the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Architectural scale conveyed authority. Large basilicas could accommodate significant gatherings and symbolized permanence. These structures distinguished Christianity visually from earlier house-based assemblies. Public worship now had monumental expression. Legal privileges reinforced this institutional shift. Clergy were granted exemption from certain civic duties that typically burdened municipal elites. In the Roman system, wealthy citizens were often required to fund public works or hold costly civic offices. Exempting clergy from these obligations allowed them to focus on ecclesiastical responsibilities and reduced financial strain. However, it also created incentive for individuals to seek clerical status for social benefit. This introduced new dynamics within church leadership selection. Imperial courts increasingly recognized episcopal arbitration. Disputes between Christians could be brought before bishops rather than secular judges, provided both parties agreed. This arrangement expanded the church's judicial function. It also blurred boundaries between spiritual and civic authority. Bishops were no longer solely pastors. They became intermediaries between local populations and imperial governance. The Donatist conflict demonstrates both the opportunity and risk of this integration. Constantine's attempts to enforce unity through state mechanisms did not eliminate division in North Africa. Instead, coercion hardened resistance among Donatists, who viewed imperial involvement as corruption of church purity. The episode illustrates that imperial favor did not guarantee internal harmony. It amplified the stakes of disagreement. At the same time, many bishops welcomed imperial support. After decades of vulnerability under persecution, state backing offered security and resources. The balance between independence and partnership became a defining tension of the 4th century. Constantine's reign did not resolve that tension. It initiated it. As Christianity became intertwined with imperial administration, questions emerged. Could the church maintain doctrinal integrity while benefiting from political power? Would imperial priorities shape theological outcomes? These questions would resurface repeatedly in subsequent generations. In the next part, we will examine Constantine's personal religious development and assess whether his commitment to Christianity deepened consistently or remained politically calibrated. One of the most debated questions in late antique history concerns Constantine's personal religious commitment. Was his embrace of Christianity primarily political calculation, gradual conviction, or a complex combination of both? The historical record provides evidence that points in multiple directions, and interpreting it requires careful attention to chronology rather than assumption. After the Battle of the Milvian Bridge in AD, Constantine publicly associated his victory with the Christian god. He adopted the Chiro symbol on military standards, most notably on the Laborum, a new imperial banner. This was not a private gesture. Military insignia communicated allegiance and legitimacy. However, Constantine did not immediately abandon all traditional religious imagery. Coins minted in the years following 312 continued to feature Sol Invictus. This coexistence suggests a transitional religious identity rather than instant exclusivity. Constantine's correspondence reveals increasing alignment with Christian theology over time. He referred to the Christian God as the source of his victories and success. He granted privileges to clergy and funded church construction across the empire. His involvement in the Council of Nicaea indicates not merely tolerance but investment in doctrinal clarity. However, he did not present himself as a theologian. He acted as facilitator and political guarantor of unity. It is also important to consider his delayed baptism. Constantine was not baptized until shortly before his death in AD 337. In modern perspective, this delay might suggest hesitation. In 4th century context, however, delayed baptism was common, especially among elites. Many believed that baptism cleansed previous sins, but that post-baptismal sin carried severe spiritual consequences. Delaying baptism until later in life was seen by some as a means of securing spiritual purification closer to death. Thus, his late baptism does not necessarily indicate Another factor is Constantine's approach to paganism. He restricted certain forms of blood sacrifice and closed a few temples associated with politically sensitive cults. But he did not impose comprehensive bans during his lifetime. He retained the title Pontifex Maximus, which linked him to traditional Roman religious authority. Whether this retention was pragmatic or symbolic remains debated. It reflects the complexity of governing a religiously diverse empire. Constantine's policies toward Christianity intensified after he became sole emperor in AD 324. His founding of Constantinople incorporated Christian architecture and symbolism. He convened additional councils to address theological disputes. His letters increasingly expressed personal reverence for the Christian God. Yet his governance remained shaped by political necessity. Maintaining stability across vast territories required measured transition rather than sudden revolution. Historians also analyze Constantine's language. In early inscriptions, he invoked a divine favor in relatively broad terms. Later, his references became more explicitly Christian. This progression suggests development rather than immediate transformation. The religious shift appears cumulative, shaped by military victory, political consolidation, and theological engagement. What can be stated with confidence is that Constantine did not treat Christianity merely as a minor cult among many. He invested resources, prestige, and authority into its institutional growth. His actions altered the empire's religious landscape in measurable ways, whether driven by profound personal faith, strategic calculation, or both. The outcome was the same. Christianity gained imperial endorsement. In the next part, we will examine the broader consequences of this endorsement and assess how Constantine's reign set the stage for later emperors who would move even further toward Christian exclusivity. By the time Constantine died in AD 337, the Roman Empire had not become exclusively Christian, but it had unmistakably shifted direction. Christianity possessed legal recognition, imperial patronage, architectural presence, and doctrinal definition under state-backed councils. Paganism remained legal. Temples still functioned in many cities, and traditional aristocratic culture persisted especially in Rome, but the balance of power had changed. Imperial resources were no longer neutral. They increasingly supported Christian institutions. The most immediate consequence of Constantine's reign was normalization. Christianity moved from a marginalized and occasionally persecuted minority to a visible component of imperial identity. Bishops corresponded with emperors, councils were convened with state logistics, clergy were granted exemptions from civic burdens. Christian symbols appeared in imperial contexts. This normalization altered how Christianity was perceived both internally and externally. It was no longer merely a countercultural movement. It was intertwined with governance. However, this integration also introduced tension. The Donatist controversy and the ongoing Arian debates revealed that imperial involvement could intensify theological disputes rather than resolve them permanently. Once emperors began enforcing doctrinal outcomes, dissent carried civil consequences. Exile became a political tool in theological disagreements. Later, emperors would continue this pattern, sometimes supporting opposing theological positions depending on political alliances. Constantine's founding of Constantinople had additional long-term impact. By shifting the imperial capital eastward, he strengthened the political and economic weight of the eastern province. Over time, this contributed to divergence between Eastern and Western administrative cultures. Christianity developed within both spheres, but with distinct theological empathies and ecclesiastical structures. The Eastern Roman Empire, later called Byzantine, would preserve and expand the model of Christian imperial governance for centuries. The process of Christianization accelerated under Constantine's successors. His sons continued favoring Christianity, and later emperors, most notably Theodosius I in the late 4th century, would move beyond toleration toward formal declaration of Christianity as the empire's official religion. Temple closures and bans on certain pagan practices would become more systematic in subsequent decades. Constantine did not complete that transformation, but he initiated its structural foundation. It is equally important to recognize continuity. Roman administrative systems remained intact. Military hierarchy, taxation structures, and provincial governance continued largely unchanged. Christianity adapted to imperial frameworks rather than replacing them. The Church inherited Roman organizational patterns, dioceses, councils, and legal procedures, and integrated them into ecclesiastical life. By examining Constantine's reign carefully, we see neither sudden revolution nor mere political opportunism. Instead, we observe a layered transition. Military victory opened opportunity. Legal toleration established security. Patronage strengthened infrastructure. Councils defined doctrine. Urban reform repositioned authority. Each development built upon the previous one. As we move into the next act, we will step back from individual policy decisions and assess how historians interpret Constantine's legacy. Was he the architect of Christian empire, the pragmatic stabilizer of a fractured state, or both? By the time Constantine died in AD, the Roman Empire was fundamentally different from the one he inherited. The question historians continue to debate is how intentional that transformation was. Did Constantine consciously design a Christian empire? Or did political consolidation gradually produce religious alignment as a byproduct? To unswear that, we must examine outcomes rather than later theological narratives. When Constantine rose to power, Christianity lacked centralized state backing. By the end of his reign, bishops advised emperors, imperial funds built basilicas, and councils convened under state authority. These are measurable institutional changes. They did not happen accidentally. Constantine issued legislation favorable to Christians, returned confiscated property, exempted clergy from certain civic duties, and intervened in doctrinal disputes. These decisions required deliberate administrative action. However, Constantine did not dismantle the existing pagan infrastructure immediately. Temples were not universally destroyed during his lifetime. Traditional priesthoods remained active in many regions. Public pagan ceremonies continued in Rome. Coins and imperial imagery evolved gradually. This evidence suggests that Constantine's project was not abrupt replacement, but strategic redirection. He favored Christianity while maintaining stability among pagan elites whose cooperation remained necessary. One of the strongest indicators of intentional design is the founding of Constantinople. By establishing a new capital with Christian architectural emphasis, Constantine created a symbolic and administrative center aligned with his religious orientation, while the city retained traditional Roman institutions. Its ceremonial life and monumental structures reflected Christian patronage. This move permanently shifted imperial geography and religious association. Another key factor is Constantine's willingness to intervene in theological conflict. The Council of Nicaea was not forced upon him. He initiated it. He recognized that doctrinal division could undermine political cohesion. By facilitating the creed's formulation and enforcing its outcome, he set precedent for imperial arbitration in religious matters, whether motivated by faith or unity concerns. The result embedded Christianity within state. At the same time, Constantine's policies reveal political pragmatism. His retention of traditional titles, including Pontifex Maximus, reflects continuity with Roman custom. His measured approach to pagan practice reduced risk of revolt. His reforms extended beyond religion into taxation, military organization, and administrative restructuring. This broader governance context prevents reduction of his reign to purely religious reform. Therefore, describing Constantine as sole architect of a fully Christian empire oversimplifies the timeline. He initiated structural alignment between Christianity and imperial authority, but the completion of that process occurred under later emperors. His reign represents foundational reorientation rather than final transformation. In the next part, we will examine how contemporary Christian writers portrayed Constantine and how those portrayals shaped his reputation in later centuries. The way Constantine has been remembered owes much to how he was described by those who wrote about him during and shortly after his lifetime. The most influential voice was Eusebius of Caesarea, a bishop and historian who became closely associated with the emperor. Eusebius authored the life of Constantine, presenting him as a divinely chosen ruler who ended persecution and advanced the Christian faith. In this portrayal, Constantine appears as a new Moses, guided by divine vision and appointed to liberate believers from oppression. This depiction shaped Christian memory for centuries. Eusebius emphasized the Milvian Bridge vision as direct intervention from the Christian God. He framed Constantine's victories as providential acts, the emperor's patronage of churches, his convening of Nicaea, and his building projects in Jerusalem were described not merely as political acts, but as fulfillment of divine purpose. This narrative strengthened the perception that Constantine's reign represented sacred history unfolding within imperial politics. However, Eusebius wrote as a Christian bishop who benefited from imperial favor. His account is not neutral political analysis. It is theological interpretation. He highlighted Constantine's piety and downplayed episodes that might complicate the image of ideal Christian ruler, such as the execution of his son Crispus and his wife Fausta under unclear circumstances. These internal family executions reveal that Constantine remained a Roman emperor operating within harsh political norms. They complicate portrayals of unqualified sanctity. Other contemporary sources offer more restrained perspectives. Lactantius, another Christian writer, focused on divine justice against persecuting emperors and credited Constantine's victory to God. His intervention, Pagan historians writing later, sometimes portrayed Constantine as abandoning traditional Roman religion and weakening imperial stability. Their criticism reflects cultural resistance to religious shift rather than detailed administrative analysis. These differing portrayals matter because they influenced later generations. In medieval Western Christianity, Constantine was often idealized as model Christian ruler who united throne and altar. In Eastern tradition, he was venerated as equal to the apostles. In modern historiography, assessments are more cautious. Scholars examine archaeological evidence, legal texts, coinage, inscriptions, and administrative reforms to reconstruct a balanced view. It is also important to note that Constantine's own self-presentation evolved. Early inscriptions used broader divine language. Later, his references became more explicitly Christian. He positioned himself as chosen instrument of divine will, but within Roman imperial vocabulary. This blending of Christian theology and imperial rhetoric created a new model of sacred kingship. The memory of Constantine, therefore, is shaped by layers: immediate Christian celebration, pagan critique, medieval idealization, and modern academic reassessment. Each layer interprets the same actions through different priorities. To understand his legacy, we must separate verifiable policy outcomes from devotional narrative. In the next part, we will analyze the long-term institutional consequences of Constantine's reign and how his policies set the trajectory for later Christian empire. Constantine's reign did not conclude the transformation of the Roman Empire into a Christian state, but it created structures that made further transformation possible. After his death in AD 337, his sons Constantine II, Constantius II, succession constans divided the empire. Each inherited not only territory, but also the precedent of imperial involvement in church affairs. The question was no longer whether emperors would engage in theological disputes, but which theological positions they would support. The Arian controversy continued intensely under Constantius II, who favored Arian-lining positions, and exiled bishops who resisted imperial-backed formulas. This development illustrates a critical institutional shift. Once imperial authority entered doctrinal debate, theology became entangled with succession, politics, and regional alliances. Bishops were no longer debating in isolation. Their positions could determine imperial favor or exile. Constantine had established the model at Nicaea. His successors applied it more aggressively. In administrative terms, Constantine's support for church construction reshaped urban landscapes across the empire. Major basilicas became focal points of civic life. Pilgrimage increased, particularly to Jerusalem, where Constantine's building projects drew attention to sites associated with Christ's life. The integration of Christian monuments into city centers reinforced the religion's visibility. Architecture functioned as public theology. This material investment could not easily be reversed. Legal privileges granted to clergy also endured. Exemptions from certain taxes and civic obligations continued, creating a class of religious leaders with institutional stability. Over time, bishops accumulated not only spiritual authority but also economic and political influence. In some cities, they became key mediators between imperial officials and local populations. This structural empowerment did not depend on Constantine's personal presence. It was embedded in law. Theodosius, ruling later in the 4th century, would move further than Constantine by declaring Nicene Christianity the official religion of the empire in 380. Pagan sacrifice was increasingly restricted under his reign. While Theodosius implemented policies beyond what Constantine enacted, the framework enabling such action originated earlier. Constantine normalized Christian imperial patronage. Later emperors intensified it. Another enduring consequence was the conceptual model of a Christian emperor as guardian of orthodoxy. This idea shaped Byzantine political theology for centuries. Emperors were expected to defend true doctrine and convene councils when disputes threatened unity. The relationship between throne and altar became systemic rather than exceptional. At the same time, Western Europe experienced gradual divergence as the Western Roman Empire declined in the 5th century. Bishops, especially the Bishop of Rome, assumed increased leadership roles, while Constantine did not directly cause the later rise of papal authority. His empowerment of episcopal structures contributed indirectly to their institutional resilience during political fragmentation. Thus, Constantine's reign should be understood as foundational. He did not finalize Christianization, but he altered the trajectory. He transformed Christianity from tolerated sect into partner of imperial administration. That partnership would evolve, intensify, and sometimes fracture, but it would remain central to European and Mediterranean history for over a millennium. In the final part of this act, we will step back and assess Constantine's legacy in balanced terms, examining both achievements and unintended consequences. Assessing Constantine's legacy requires separating measurable outcomes from ideological interpretations. His reign achieved political consolidation after decades of civil conflict. By defeating rival emperors and ending the Tetrarchic fragmentation, he restored centralized authority. This alone stabilized administrative and military structures that had been vulnerable during the 3rd century. Stability provided the foundation upon which religious transformation could occur. His policies toward Christianity produced structural change rather than instant religious uniformity. Legal toleration removed fear of persecution. Financial patronage enabled construction of monumental churches. Episcopal authority expanded through legal recognition. The Council of Nicaea established precedent for imperial involvement in doctrinal definition. These developments are verifiable through legislation, architectural remains, and contemporary documentation. They represent tangible shifts, not symbolic gestures. However, the consequences were not uniformly positive or universally accepted. Imperial intervention in theological disputes introduced coercion into religious life. Exile, confiscation, and political pressure became tools in doctrinal conflict. Unity achieved through state authority sometimes deepened division among dissenters, as seen in the Donatist and Arian controversies. Constantine sought cohesion, but the method of enforcement altered the character of ecclesiastical debate. Another unintended consequence was the gradual association of religious identity with political loyalty, as Christianity aligned with imperial power. Dissent from imperial-backed doctrine could be interpreted not only as theological error but as destabilizing behavior. This fusion of belief and governance shaped later European history in complex ways. It enabled institutional strength but also intensified conflict when authority was contested. It is also essential to recognize what Constantine did not accomplish. He did not outlaw paganism entirely. He did not eliminate theological controversy. He did not create a fully Christianized empire in a single generation. Those developments occurred gradually, influenced by his successors and by demographic shifts across regions. His reign represents acceleration rather than completion. From a broader historical perspective, Constantine stands at an intersection. He inherited a fractured empire shaped by military instability and religious plurality. Through calculated political consolidation and progressive religious alignment, he redirected imperial policy, whether driven primarily by conviction, strategy, or both. His decisions produced enduring transformation. By the end of the 4th century, Christianity would dominate imperial institutions. By the medieval period, the idea of a Christian ruler would be normative across Europe. These later developments trace back to precedents established during Constantine's reign. His life illustrates how individual leadership within a moment of crisis can redirect institutional history. In the next act, we will examine the broader cultural shift from pagan Rome to Christian empire and analyze how gradual social change accompanied imperial policy. When Constantine altered imperial policy toward Christianity, the legal framework changed immediately, but cultural transformation moved more gradually. Law can be declared in a year. Habits of worship and social identity take generations to shift. In the early 4th century, most inhabitants of the Roman Empire still participated in traditional religious practices. Temples dedicated to Jupiter, Mars, Apollo, and local deities remained active. Public festivals structured civic life. Religious participation was intertwined with loyalty to city and empire. Constantine's reforms did not erase this structure overnight. What changed first was visibility. Christian communities could build larger meeting spaces without fear of confiscation. Public processions, once impossible or risky, became feasible. Clergy gained recognition within municipal life. As basilicas rose in urban centers, Christianity moved from peripheral neighborhoods to central architectural prominence. This mattered because architecture shapes perception. A monumental church signaled permanence in ways a private home gathering could not. Another gradual shift occurred in patronage networks. Wealthy converts could now donate openly to Christian causes without risking political disadvantage. Endowments supported clergy salaries, charitable distributions, and construction projects. Charity-already, a defining feature of Christian communities, expanded in scale. Hospitals and organized care for the poor would later grow from these foundations. As social services became associated with Christian institutions, public perception shifted from suspicion to appreciation. Education also evolved incrementally. Classical literature remained central to elite education. Constantine did not abolish traditional curricula. However, Christian scholars increasingly engaged with classical texts while promoting Christian theology. Over time, bishops and theologians became public intellectuals. The integration of rhetoric, philosophy, and Christian teaching strengthened the intellectual legitimacy of the religion within Greco-Roman culture. Imperial ceremonies likewise adjusted slowly. Constantine's court adopted Christian symbols in certain contexts, but traditional forms of imperial display persisted. Titles and rituals were adapted rather than discarded. This blending reflects the broader pattern: transformation through incorporation rather than destruction. The Roman state remained Roman in administrative structure while gradually reflecting Christian moral vocabulary. One significant cultural marker was legislation concerning Sunday. Constantine's declaration of Sunday as a day of rest for urban populations did not eliminate work universally, but it established rhythm aligned with Christian worship. Over time, such measures reinforced Christian practice at societal scale. Law supported custom, and custom reinforced identity. At the same time, pagan intellectuals did not disappear. Prominent families in Rome continued supporting traditional cults. Philosophical schools maintained classical traditions. Religious diversity remained characteristic of many regions. The cultural shift was uneven geographically. Eastern cities often transitioned more quickly due to demographic concentrations of Christians, while parts of the West retained stronger pagan aristocratic influence for longer periods. Thus, Constantine's reign initiated cultural redirection without immediate homogenization. Political authority favored Christianity. Social practice adapted gradually. The empire entered a transitional phase, where old and new religious identities coexisted under shifting imperial preference. In the next part, we will examine resistance to this transformation and how pagan elites and regional groups responded to the rising prominence of Christianity. While Constantine's policies favored Christianity, they did not eliminate attachment to traditional Roman religion, particularly among aristocratic elites. In Rome itself, many senatorial families maintained long-standing connections to pagan priesthoods and temple patronage. Religious office had social prestige. Ritual observance reinforced civic identity and ancestral heritage. For these elites, Christianity represented not merely a theological alternative, but a cultural disruption. Resistance during Constantine's reign was generally restrained rather than openly rebellious. Because pagan worship remained legal, opposition did not take the form of immediate revolt. Instead, it appeared in continued patronage of temples, preservation of traditional festivals, and literary defense of classical religion. Pagan intellectuals emphasized philosophical interpretations of traditional gods, presenting them as symbolic expressions of cosmic order rather than literal anthropomorphic beings. This reframing allowed educated elites to defend inherited religion against Christian critique. The Roman Senate provides a clear example of cautious adaptation. Constantine did not purge pagan senators from office. He maintained working relationships with established families. Traditional ceremonies tied to civic administration continued. However, imperial financial support increasingly flowed toward Christian institutions rather than pagan temples. Over time, reduced patronage weakened temple maintenance. The decline was economic and gradual rather than sudden and enforced. In provincial cities, responses varied. Regions with significant Christian populations adjusted more quickly to imperial preference. In areas where Christians remained a minority, traditional religious practice persisted with little immediate interference. Constantine's approach avoided empire-wide prohibition, minimizing violent backlash. This strategy reflects political calculation. Abrupt suppression of deeply embedded religious customs could have reignited instability after decades of civil conflict. Nevertheless, tension increased in some regions when imperial decisions appeared to favor Christian claims in disputes. The Donatist controversy in North Africa demonstrated that internal Christian disagreement could escalate into civil unrest when state power enforced one side. Pagan observers noted such conflicts as evidence that Christianity did not automatically produce unity. Critics argued that aligning religion with imperial authority intensified factionalism rather than resolving it. There were also instances of localized temple closure or restriction under Constantine, particularly when associated with politically sensitive cults or practices considered morally problematic by Christian leaders. However, systematic dismantling of pagan infrastructure largely occurred under later emperors. Constantine's reign represents transitional preference rather than coercive eradication. An additional dimension of resistance was symbolic. Some pagan writers portrayed Constantine as abandoning ancestral gods and weakening traditional piety. Later historians such as Eusebius, writing from a pagan perspective, argued that imperial misfortune resulted from neglect of traditional worship. While these accounts were written after Constantine's lifetime, they reflect enduring sentiment among segments of society who viewed Christian ascendancy as despite resistance, many elites adapted pragmatically. Association with imperial favor carried advantages. Conversion among aristocratic families increased gradually in subsequent decades, as Christian bishops gained civic prominence and imperial patronage solidified institutional benefits. Alignment became socially advantageous. Thus, the cultural shift initiated under Constantine did not unfold without friction, but it progressed through administrative preference, economic redirection, and generational adaptation rather than immediate confrontation. In the next part, we will analyze how Constantine's model influenced later emperors, who moved beyond toleration toward official Christian dominance. Constantine did not declare Christianity the exclusive religion of the Roman Empire. However, his reign established the conditions under which that step would later occur. The progression from toleration to preference, and from preference to official dominance, unfolded over the remainder of the 4th century. Understanding that progression clarifies Constantine's role as initiator rather than completer. After Constantine's death, in AD 337, his sons inherited both political authority and the precedent of imperial involvement in Christian affairs. Constantine II, who ruled much of the empire after internal conflicts among the brothers, favored Arian-lining theological positions and used imperial authority to exile bishops who resisted his stance. This demonstrates how Constantine's model of council-backed enforcement could be used in varying doctrinal directions. Theology became intertwined with imperial allegiance. During the mid-4th century, imperial laws began restricting certain pagan practices more directly, particularly blood sacrifices. While temples often remained open, public sacres long central to Roman religious identity faced increasing limitations. These restrictions reflected gradual moral and theological shifts within imperial policy. Christianity's growing institutional presence made traditional rites less central to state identity. The decisive move toward official Christian dominance came under Emperor Theodosius I in 83 and 80. The Edict of Thessalonica declared Nicene Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. This edict required subjects to adhere to the faith defined by the bishops of Rome and Alexandria. While enforcement varied regionally, the declaration represented formal transition from favored religion to official creed. Pagan temples were increasingly closed or repurposed in subsequent years, and public pagan sacrifice became prohibited. This development did not occur in isolation. It built upon decades of structural change. Constantine had normalized Christian imperial patronage, elevated bishops into administrative influence, and established councils as mechanisms for doctrinal resolution. Later, emperors inherited an empire in which Christianity already occupied visible, institutional space. Without Constantine's foundational policies, Theodosius' declaration would have faced far greater resistance. Culturally, the shift influenced education, law, and social expectation. Christian moral teaching increasingly informed legislation, particularly regarding marriage, family law, and public morality. Charitable institutions expanded under episcopal leadership. Urban landscapes continued transforming as churches replaced or overshadowed traditional temples. However, the move toward official Christian dominance also generated new conflicts. Some pagan elites resisted marginalization, The removal of the altar of victory from the Roman Senate in the late 4th century sparked debate between pagan senator Symmachus and Christian bishop Ambrose. These exchanges illustrate that religious transformation remained contested even decades after Constantine. By the end of the 4th century, Christianity had moved from persecuted sect to state-supported institution to official religion. Constantine's reign marked the turning point at which imperial power began favoring Christianity. Subsequent rulers accelerated the trajectory. In the final part of this act, we will evaluate how historians today assess the long-term cultural and political impact of Constantine's decision to align imperial authority with Christianity. By the end of the 4th century, the Roman Empire officially identified with Nicene Christianity. While Constantine did not enact that final step himself, his reign made it structurally possible. The long-term impact of his decisions extends far beyond his lifetime and reshaped European, Mediterranean, and eventually global history. Politically, Constantine's alignment of imperial authority with Christianity introduced a new model of governance. The Christian emperor as guardian of orthodoxy and protector of the church. This model became foundational in the Eastern Roman, or Byzantine, Empire. Emperors convened councils, influenced theological debates, and intervened in ecclesiastical disputes. The relationship between throne and altar became institutionalized rather than incidental. Political legitimacy increasingly included religious responsibility. In the Western provinces, the impact unfolded differently. As the Western Roman Empire declined in the 5th century, bishops assumed roles that extended beyond spiritual leadership into civic administration. The Bishop of Rome gradually emerged as a stabilizing authority during political fragmentation. While Constantine did not create papal supremacy, his empowerment of episcopal structures contributed to the resilience of church institutions during imperial collapse. The continuity of Christian administration preserved aspects of Roman order long after imperial authority weakened. Culturally, Constantine's policies accelerated the transformation of urban space and social identity. Basilicas became central gathering places. Christian festivals reshaped communal calendars. Public morality reflected increasingly Christian ethical language. Over generations, conversion patterns shifted not only through legal influence, but through education, family networks, and social advantage. Christianity moved from minority identity to cultural norm. Intellectually, the integration of Christianity into imperial structures encouraged theological development. Councils defined doctrine more systematically. Creeds articulated boundaries of orthodoxy. Theological debate, once confined to regional networks, acquired empire-wide significance. This standardization contributed to long-term doctrinal continuity within mainstream Christianity. At the same time, Constantine's legacy remains debated. Some historians argue that imperial patronage diluted Christian simplicity by introducing political ambition and coercive enforcement. Others contend that without imperial support, Christianity might have remained fragmented and regionally confined. Both perspectives recognize that the alliance between church and empire produced benefits and tensions simultaneously. What is historically verifiable is this. Before Constantine, Christianity operated without imperial sponsorship and under periodic persecution. After Constantine, it operated with legal protection, state resources, and political visibility. That shift altered its trajectory permanently. The process was gradual, contested, and uneven, but it was decisive. Constantine stands not as sole architect of Christian civilization, but as catalyst. His military victory created opportunity. His legislation established toleration. His patronage built infrastructure. His councils shaped doctrine. His founding of Constantinople repositioned imperial geography. Each action carried consequences that extended beyond his reign. As we move into the final act, we will bring the full narrative together to visiting the crisis of the 3rd century, the Milvian Bridge, the Edict of Milan, Nicaea, Constantinople, and the gradual Christianization of Empire II. evaluate the complete historical arc of Constantine's life and legacy. By the mid-320 SC, Constantine had achieved what few Roman emperors before him had secured: sole and uncontested rule over the empire. Yet political stability did not eliminate internal tension. Imperial power in Rome had always carried harsh realities, and Constantine's reign was no exception. To understand his legacy fully, we must examine not only his religious and administrative reforms, but also the internal crises within his own household. In AD 326, Constantine ordered the execution of his eldest son, Crispus. Crispus had been a capable military commander and had played a significant role in victories against Licinius. His reputation was strong, and he was publicly honored. The reasons for his sudden execution remain unclear. Ancient sources provide conflicting explanations. Some suggest accusations of misconduct involving Constantine's wife. Others imply political intrigue or court rivalry. What is certain is that Crispus was executed, likely at Pola in present-day Croatia. Shortly afterward, Fausta herself was executed under circumstances that are also debated. Later accounts describe her death by overheating in a bath, though the reliability of this description is uncertain. These events shocked contemporaries and complicate portrayals of Constantine as purely benevolent Christian ruler. They reflect the brutal realities of imperial succession politics, where perceived threats even within family were often eliminated to preserve stability. This episode matters because it demonstrates continuity with Roman imperial norms. Christian patronage did not erase the political logic of power preservation. Emperors operated within a system where potential rivals, including sons, could become focal points of factional support. Constantine's actions in this case align with earlier Roman precedents of dynastic elimination rather than uniquely Christian ethics. At the same time, Constantine continued promoting Christian causes. His support for church construction in Jerusalem intensified after AD 326, including the dedication of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. His mother Helena undertook pilgrimage to the Holy Land and, according to later tradition, identified significant Christian sites. These developments reinforced the symbolic connection between imperial authority and Christian sacred geography. The coexistence of pious patronage and severe political action reveals complexity rather than contradiction. Constantine was not a monastic figure removed from statecraft. He was an emperor shaped by Roman political culture. His religious alignment influenced policy, but it did not remove the demands of imperial security. By examining these internal crises, we avoid idealized portrayals and acknowledge the realities of 4th century governance. Constantine's reign combined strategic religious reform with traditional exercises of power. Both dimensions shaped the empire's future. In the next part, we will explore how Constantine structured succession among his sons and how that decision affected the stability of the empire after his death. As Constantine approached the later years of his reign, one central concern dominated imperial strategy: succession. The Roman Empire had suffered repeated civil wars because succession was rarely uncontested. The Tetrarchic system attempted structured transition, but collapsed into rivalry. Constantine understood that without clear arrangements, the unity he secured could dissolve quickly after his death. He elevated his surviving sons Constantine II, Constantius II, and Constans to positions of Caesar during his lifetime. This designation signaled formal recognition as imperial heirs and allowed them to gain administrative and military experience. By distributing authority regionally while retaining overall supremacy, Constantine attempted to balance unity with practical governance. Teasme wrote it in modified form, aspects of the earlier Tetrarchic model, but centered on dynastic continuity rather than collegial rule among unrelated generals. However, dynastic succession carried inherent risks. Rivalries among heirs often erupted once the central authority figure died. Constantine's efforts did not eliminate this danger. When he died in AD 337 near Nicomedia, the transition was not entirely peaceful. Shortly after his death, a purge occurred in which several relatives and potential claimants were eliminated. The exact orchestration remains debated, but the result was consolidation of power among his three sons. This event reflects continuity with earlier Roman patterns of eliminating rivals to secure stability. The division of the empire among the brothers soon generated tension. Constantine II controlled Britain, Gaul, and Spain. Constans governed Italy, Africa, and the Balkans. Constantius II ruled the eastern provinces. Though the arrangement initially preserved peace, disputes over territorial authority emerged. Constantine II was killed in conflict with Constans in AD 340. Later, Constans himself was overthrown and killed in AD 350. Constantius II ultimately became sole emperor. This pattern illustrates that Constantine's structural reforms did not eliminate the core challenge of Roman governance. Concentrated power encouraged rivalry. The empire remained vast and administratively complex. While Constantine stabilized the system temporarily, dynastic succession reintroduced instability within a generation. Religiously, succession also influenced doctrinal alignment. Constantius II favored Arian theology, reversing some Nicene enforcement. This shift demonstrates how theological outcomes remain vulnerable to imperial preference. Constantine had established precedent for emperor-mediated doctrine. His successors exercised that precedent according to their own convictions or alliances. Despite political turbulence after his death, the institutional transformation he initiated endured. Christianity retained legal recognition and structural integration within imperial administration. Even emperors who favored different theological positions did not revert to pagan persecution. The alliance between church and state persisted as established norm. Thus, Constantine's approach to succession achieved short-term continuity, but not long-term dynastic stability. His sons inherited both centralized authority and the burdens of ruling a religiously transformed empire. The fragility of unity after his death underscores the limits of individual leadership in reshaping structural challenges. In the next part, we will examine how Constantine's policies influenced military identity and imperial symbolism in the decades following his reign. One of the most visible transformations under Constantine occurred in military symbolism. Before his reign, Roman armies marched under standards associated with traditional deities, imperial genius, and long-standing civic religion. After the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, Constantine introduced the laborum, a military standard bearing the Chi symbol. This emblem, formed from the first two Greek letters of Christ's name, became associated with imperial authority and divine favor. The integration of Christian imagery into military standards was not decorative. It communicated allegiance and ideological alignment. This shift mattered because Roman military identity was foundational to imperial power. Armies proclaimed emperors, defended frontiers, and enforced political decisions. By incorporating Christian symbolism into military insignia, Constantine linked divine endorsement to imperial command structure. Soldiers who marched under the laborum did so as representatives of a ruler who publicly attributed victory to the Christian god. The message was clear. Imperial success was aligned with Christian providence. However, the transformation was gradual rather than absolute. Not all traditional imagery disappeared immediately. Some coinage and standards retained earlier motifs during transitional years. Constantine's approach balanced innovation with continuity, ensuring that the army composed of individuals from diverse religious backgrounds. Illogical, abrupt religious imposition on soldiers could have disrupted cohesion. Instead, Christian symbolism increased progressively within imperial imagery. Military victories following Constantine's consolidation reinforced association between Christian favor and imperial triumph. Campaigns along the Danube and eastern frontiers were framed within narratives of divine support. While Constantine did not present himself as a priestly monarch in the manner of certain earlier rulers, he did cultivate the image of emperor under divine guidance. This image influenced subsequent expectations of imperial conduct. The presence of Christian symbols in statecraft extended beyond the battlefield. Imperial correspondence invoked Christian terminology more explicitly over time. Laws referenced divine favor in ways that reflected Christian monotheism rather than traditional Roman polytheism. The emperor's public identity evolved into that of protector of Christian orthodoxy and order. Yet this development also carried tension. As Christianity became intertwined with imperial military power, questions arose about the compatibility of faith and force. Early Christian communities had navigated complex attitudes toward military service. Under Constantine, the relationship normalized. Christian soldiers served openly. The state's coercive power was no longer perceived as inherently opposed to Christian identity. This integration shaped the trajectory of Christian political thought. The concept of a ruler defending the faith through military means would later influence medieval and Byzantine political theology. Constantine's reign marked the beginning of that model. In the final part of this act, we will examine Constantine's final years, his death, and how contemporaries interpreted the closing chapter of his life. In the final years of his reign, Constantine's focus shifted increasingly toward consolidation rather than expansion. After founding Constantinople in AD 330, he invested in its development as administrative and symbolic capital. The city's infrastructure expanded with forums, imperial residences, and Christian by relocating the center of power eastward. Constantine ensured that imperial governance was positioned closer to key military frontiers and economically productive provinces. This decision shaped the empire long after his death. Religiously, Constantine's public alignment with Christianity continued. He maintained correspondence with bishops, supported further church construction, and intervened when theological disputes resurfaced. The Arian controversy, despite the Council of Nicaea's formal resolution, did not disappear. Constantine at times softened enforcement measures and allowed previously exiled bishops to return. His priority remained unity rather than rigid doctrinal policing. This flexibility illustrates that his goal was political cohesion informed by faith, not purely theological precision. In AD 337, Constantine fell seriously ill while near Nicomedia in the eastern province. Recognizing his declining condition, he postponed a planned campaign and sought baptism. He was baptized by Eusebius of Nicomedia, a bishop associated with Arian sympathies. This detail has prompted debate among historians, given Nicaea's earlier condemnation of Arian positions. However, latter-life baptism was consistent with the practice of many 4th century Christians who delayed the rite. For Constantine, baptism marked formal entry into the sacramental life of the Church at the end of his rule. He died on May 22nd. At 337, his body was transported to Constantinople and buried in the Church of the Holy Apostles, a site he had commissioned. The burial arrangement symbolized his integration of imperial and Christian identity. He was placed among cenotaphs dedicated to the apostles, reinforcing later perceptions of him as divinely favored ruler. This burial location reflected both political symbolism and religious affiliation. Contemporary reactions varied. Christian writers interpreted his death as culmination of divinely guided reign. Pagan observers viewed the religious transformation of the empire with skepticism. Yet, regardless of interpretation, the structural changes he initiated endured. His sons inherited a Christian-favored empire. Imperial councils remained instruments of doctrinal clarification. Urban landscapes reflected Christian patronage. Constantine's final act, baptism before death, completed the personal dimension of a reign, already marked by institutional transformation. Whether motivated by conviction matured over decades or reinforced by political alignment, his life ended with explicit Christian identity. With his death, the transitional phase he began entered a new chapter under his successors. The empire would continue evolving toward stronger Christian dominance, but the foundational redirection had already occurred. In the next act, we will synthesize the full historical arc from 3rd century crisis to Constantine's death, evaluate how his leadership permanently altered the relationship between religion and empire. When Constantine was born in the early 270s, The Roman Empire was emerging from one of the most destabilizing periods in its history. Military usurpations, economic decline, and external invasions had nearly fractured imperial unity. Diocletian's Tetrarchic reforms attempted to stabilize governance through shared rule and administrative restructuring. That system provided temporary relief, but failed to prevent renewed civil war. Constantine rose within that instability. His military acclamation in AD 36 did not restore order immediately. It initiated another phase of rivalry. The Battle of the Milvian Bridge in AD 312 marked more than a personal victory. It signaled the consolidation of Western power under Constantine, and the beginning of public association between imperial success and the Christian God. The Edict of Milan in AD 330 reversed legal persecution and restored Christian property. These were not isolated religious gestures, they were political acts, reshaping imperial policy. Legal toleration removed structural barriers that had confined Christian communities for decades. After defeating Licinius in AD 324, Constantine unified the empire under a single ruler once more. This consolidation allowed religious policy to move beyond compromise. The Council of Nicaea in AD 325 established doctrinal precedent and introduced imperial oversight into theological debate. The founding of Constantinople in AD 330 repositioned imperial geography and symbolically linked the empire's future with Christian patronage. These events form a connected sequence rather than disconnected milestones. Military victory enabled political authority. Political authority enabled legal reform. Legal reform enabled institutional expansion. Institutional expansion required doctrinal clarification. Geographic restructuring reinforced ideological direction. Each step built logically upon the previous one, yet consolidation did not eliminate tension. Internal theological disputes continued. Pagan traditions persisted in many regions. Dynastic rivalry resurfaced after Constantine's death. The empire remained administratively Roman. Even as its religious alignment shifted, what changed was not the bureaucratic framework, but the spiritual orientation of imperial support. By the end of Constantine's reign, Christianity was no longer vulnerable minority faith. It possessed state backing, architectural prominence, and legal integration. The empire had not become exclusively Christian, but it had moved decisively toward that trajectory. In the next part, we will examine how this structural shift altered the concept of political legitimacy and redefined the role of the emperor in religious life. Before Constantine, Roman emperors derived legitimacy from military success, senatorial recognition, dynastic continuity, and traditional religious endorsement. The emperor served as Pontifex Maximus, guardian of Rome's ancestral rights. Victory in battle was interpreted as favor from the gods of the Roman pantheon. Religious and political legitimacy were inseparable, but they were grounded in polytheistic tradition. Constantine did not eliminate this linkage between religion and legitimacy. He reoriented it. After the Milvian Bridge, he publicly attributed victory to the Christian God. This was not a minor rhetorical shift. It repositioned the source of divine endorsement from traditional Roman deities to a monotheistic framework. The emperor remained divinely favored, but the identity of the divine power had changed. This reframing altered the theological foundation of imperial authority. Under Constantine, the emperor increasingly appeared as protector of Christian orthodoxy. By convening the Council of Nicaea, he acted not as priest in ritual sense, but as guarantor of unity and belief. His authority extended into facilitating doctrinal clarity. The emperor became mediator between theological factions, using state power to enforce consensus when necessary. This new model fused political stability with religious coherence in unprecedented ways. The change also influenced how subjects understood loyalty. Allegiance to the emperor now intersected with allegiance to a religion increasingly associated with imperial favor. Although Constantine did not criminalize pagan worship, Christians benefited from proximity to state authority. Over time, Adherence to Nicene Christianity became associated with political conformity under later emperors. The seeds of that association were planted during Constantine's reign. Importantly, Constantine did not claim divinity for himself in the manner of certain earlier emperors. The imperial cult, which had venerated emperors as divine figures, declined in prominence. Instead, Constantine positioned himself as servant or instrument of a single supreme god. This shift reduced emphasis on emperor worship and redefined sacred kingship. The emperor's legitimacy was grounded in divine appointment rather than personal divinity. The redefinition of legitimacy also reshaped imperial ceremony. Christian clergy participated in court life. Imperial letters invoked Christian terminology. Victory monuments and public dedications increasingly referenced divine favor in monotheistic language. These symbolic adjustments reinforced the conceptual transformation. However, the integration of political and religious legitimacy carried long-term implications. Once the emperor was viewed as guardian of orthodoxy, theological disagreement could threaten political stability. Later emperors would intervene more aggressively in doctrinal disputes, sometimes shifting theological positions according to political alliance. The intertwining of throne and altar created both cohesion and conflict. By redefining the religious basis of imperial authority, Constantine altered how power was justified. The emperor was no longer primarily high priest of traditional cults, but patron and protector of Christian faith. This conceptual shift endured long after his death. In the next part, we will analyze how Constantine's model influenced broader European political theology and the development of Christian kingship in subsequent centuries. Constantine's reign did not simply change Roman policy. It introduced a model of rulership that would shape European political theology for centuries. Before him, Christian communities had lived largely outside imperial endorsement. After him, the concept of a ruler defending and promoting Christianity became thinkable and eventually normative. This development did not occur instantly, but Constantine provided the precedent. In the Eastern Roman Empire, later called Byzantine, emperors inherited Constantine's model of sacred kingship. They were expected to defend orthodoxy, convene councils, and maintain unity between church and state. The emperor was not considered a priest in sacramental sense, but he was understood as divinely appointed guardian of Christian order. This framework influenced imperial self-understanding for over a millennium. When theological controversies erupted, whether concerning Christology, iconoclasm, or other doctrinal issues, emperors intervened because Constantine had demonstrated that they could. In the West, the model evolved differently. As the Western Roman Empire weakened in the 5th century, Christian bishops became stabilizing civic figures. Germanic rulers who established successor kingdoms in former Roman territories often adopted Christianity, sometimes initially in Arian form and later in Nicene alignment. The idea that a ruler should support and defend the Christian faith drew indirectly from Constantine's precedent. Even when political structures changed, the conceptual link between authority and Christian patronage persisted. The coronation of Charlemagne in AD 800 illustrates long-term influence. Although centuries removed from Constantine, the notion of a Christian emperor crowned with ecclesiastical participation echoes the earlier fusion of imperial and religious legitimacy. Constantine did not design medieval Europe, but his alignment of throne and church made later developments intelligible. At the same time, this model produced tension. Disputes between emperors and bishops over authority boundaries emerged repeatedly. In the Byzantine context, debates over the extent of imperial control in church, affairs sometimes described as Kaiseropapism, reflect ongoing negotiation of roles. In the West, conflicts such as the investiture controversy in the medieval period reveal friction between secular rulers and ecclesiastical leaders. These conflicts trace conceptual lineage to the structural fusion initiated in the 4th century. Constantine's reign also influenced missionary expansion beyond imperial borders. As Christianity gained imperial sponsorship, It acquired resources and organizational stability conducive to outward expansion. Over subsequent centuries, Christianization spread across Europe, often intertwined with political alliances and royal patronage. The pattern of ruler-led conversion, visible among later European kings, echoes Constantine's example of imperial alignment with Christianity. Thus, Constantine's impact extends beyond administrative law and urban architecture. He reshaped the conceptual relationship between divine authority and political power. Rulers were no longer merely administrators of civil order. They became defenders of a specific religious identity. That fusion would shape debates about sovereignty, legitimacy, and moral governance across centuries. In the final part of this act, we will bring together the military, political, religious, and cultural threads of Constantine's reign into a single historical assessment before moving into the closing act, when we assemble the full sequence from 3rd century. Instability to Constantinus at death in AD 337, we see not a single dramatic rupture, but a layered transformation. Constantine did not invent Christianity. He did not create Roman administration. He did not erase pagan culture overnight. What he did was repositioned imperial power in relation to a growing religious movement at a moment when political consolidation made such repositioning possible. The crisis of the 3rd century weakened imperial stability and forced structural reform under the collapse of the Tetrarchy reopened competition. Constantine's military success, especially at the Milvian Bridge, provided opportunity to redefine divine favor in imperial terms. The Edict of Milan established legal toleration. The defeat of Licinius enabled sole rule. The Council of Nicaea set doctrinal precedent under imperial oversight. The founding of Constantinople repositioned political geography. Each development built logically upon the previous one. By the time Constantine died, Christianity had gained institutional security and public prominence. Paganism had not vanished, but it no longer enjoyed uncontested state sponsorship. Bishops held civic influence. Christian architecture reshaped cities. Imperial rhetoric increasingly invoked monotheistic language. The emperor was no longer primarily guardian of traditional cults, but protector of Christian orthodoxy. This shift mattered beyond theology. It altered how political authority was justified, how unity was defined, and how law intersected with belief. It influenced succession politics, military symbolism, education, and urban planning. Constantine's reign marks the beginning of an era in which religion and state would be intertwined at structural level across much of Europe and the Mediterranean world. Yet the transformation was neither simple nor uncontested. Internal Christian disputes intensified under imperial involvement. Pagan elites resisted marginalization. Dynastic rivalry persisted. Constantine's own household reflected the harsh realities of Roman political culture. His reign combined reform with continuity, conviction with calculation. Historians therefore describe Constantine as catalyst rather than sole architect. Without his decisions, Christianity might have remained regionally confined for longer. Without broader demographic and cultural trends, imperial patronage alone would not have sustained growth. The convergence of political consolidation and religious expansion produced the decisive shift. As we move into the final act, we will close by revisiting the central question: did Constantine change Christianity more profoundly? Or did Christianity change the Roman Empire more deeply? And what does that reveal about the relationship between belief and power? When we return to the central question, did Constantine change Christianity more? Or did Christianity change the Roman Empire more? The historical answer resists simplicity. The transformation was reciprocal, but not symmetrical. Constantine undeniably changed Christianity's public position. Before his reign, Christians could be tolerated in certain periods and persecuted in others. After the Edict of Milan, Christianity possessed legal security. After Nicaea, it possessed imperially recognized doctrinal boundaries. After Constantinople, it had architectural prominence, embedded in a new capital. Imperial patronage accelerated institutional organization, expanded episcopal authority, and normalized church-state interaction. These changes altered Christianity's external structure and social visibility. At the same time, Christianity changed the empire's ideological foundation. Roman authority had long been tied to polytheistic tradition and emperor veneration. Under Constantine, divine legitimacy was reframed in monotheistic terms. The emperor became servant of a single supreme god rather than participant in a pantheon. Over time, Christian moral language influenced legislation, charity systems, and civic identity. By the end of the 4th century, imperial identity was inseparable from Nicene Christianity. The relationship was therefore dynamic. Constantine used Christianity to stabilize and unify a fractured empire. Christianity used imperial support to expand infrastructure and influence. The alliance produced benefits, legal protection, architectural growth, and doctrinal clarity. It also produced tension, coercion in theological disputes, political involvement in spiritual matters, and long-term debates about authority boundaries. One key point remains clear. Constantine did not impose Christianity on an entirely unwilling empire overnight, nor did Christianity seize imperial power independently. The convergence occurred at a moment of political consolidation and religious growth. Demographic expansion among Christians during the 3rd century had already prepared the ground. Constantine's decisions accelerated and institutionalized what was already developing. The Milvian Bridge symbolizes the turning point. Whether one interprets the vision as personal conviction or political calculation, the outcome redirected imperial policy. From that battle forward, Christianity's trajectory was tied to imperial authority. Subsequent emperors would shape that relationship differently, but the structural alignment remained. In evaluating Constantine, we must avoid extremes. He was neither flawless saint nor cynical opportunist alone. He was a Roman emperor operating within Roman political culture, who progressively aligned himself with Christianity and reshaped imperial structures accordingly. In the final section, we will close by summarizing the full historical arc and reflect on what Constantine's story reveals about power, belief, and historical change. Constantine's life begins in an empire shaken by instability. The 3rd century nearly fractured Roman authority. Diocletian's reforms stabilized administration but failed to secure lasting unity. Constantine emerged from civil war through military skill and political timing. His victory at the Milvian Bridge provided both legitimacy and opportunity. From that moment, a sequence unfolded. Legal toleration in 313, sole rule in 324, doctrinal council in 325, new capital in 330, and sustained patronage until his death in 337. Each milestone reinforced structural alignment between Christianity and imperial governance. Paganism did not disappear immediately, but state preference shifted decisively. After his death, theological conflict continued. Dynastic rivalry resurfaced, and later emperors intensified Christian policy. Yet the fundamental redirection remained intact. By the end of the 4th century, Christianity was not merely tolerated or favored, it was official. The empire Constantine reshaped would carry Christian identity for centuries, influencing Byzantine governance, medieval kingship, and European civilization. The story of Constantine demonstrates how leadership within crisis can redirect institutions. It also illustrates how belief and power, once intertwined, reshape one another. Political authority can accelerate religious growth. Religious conviction can redefine political legitimacy. The consequences extend beyond one lifetime. Thank you for following this full historical journey. If this long-form exploration helped clarify how Constantine and Christianity reshaped each other, take a moment to like the video and subscribe for more deep historical narratives. Now tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? And after tracing the entire arc, What do you think was the true turning point? The Milvian Bridge, the Edict of Milan, the Council of Nicaea, or the founding of Constantinople? I'll see you in the next story.